The grand plaza of Valoria stretched out like a jeweled ocean under three suns. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the massive space, their bodies ranging from crystalline forms that caught the light to massive creatures that towered over the crowds. Taman stood near the outer edge of the ceremonial platform, his human frame looking small and unremarkable among the alien dignitaries. He wore the standard uniform of his security company, a simple black suit that marked him as hired help rather than anyone important. He had been working off-world for 2 years now, sending most of his pay back to Earth, where his younger sister was studying medicine. The job was simple enough. Stand guard, look alert, and try not to embarrass the company. Most aliens barely noticed him. Humans were still new to the galactic community, considered primitive and reckless by the established species. Taman had learned to ignore the dismissive looks and whispered comments about his kind. The ceremony was celebrating 5,000 years since the founding of the Valoran Empire. Queen Mion stood at the center of the platform, her silver skin gleaming in the sunlight. She was tall and elegant, with features that seemed carved from moonstone. Beside her stood her son, Crown Prince Heijin, a boy of 12 with the same silver skin and large dark eyes that marked him as royalty. The young prince looked bored, shifting his weight from foot to foot as various speakers droned on about unity and prosperity. Taman scanned the crowd out of habit. His supervisor had told him this was just ceremony duty, nothing dangerous. The Valoran Royal Guard surrounded the platform, 50 of the finest warriors in the Empire. Each guard was augmented with technology that made them faster and stronger than any natural being. Their armor could stop anything short of a ship's cannon. Their sensors could detect threats from a kilometer away. Compared to them, Taman was just a warm body-filling space. That was when he saw it. A flicker of movement in the crowd, too fast and too purposeful. His instincts screamed danger. Taman had served in the Korean military before going off-world, and he had learned to trust that feeling in his gut. He pushed forward, trying to get a better view. The royal guards stood motionless, their sensors apparently detecting nothing wrong. The attack came from nowhere. One moment the crowd was cheering as the queen raised her hands to address them. The next moment, reality seemed to tear open. A weapon that bent space itself fired from somewhere in the mass of bodies. The energy blast was invisible to most sensors, designed specifically to bypass Valoran shields. It streaked toward Prince Heijin with the speed of thought. The royal guards froze. Their systems had detected nothing until the blast was already in flight. Their training prepared them for conventional attacks, for weapons they understood. This was something new, something impossible. They had microseconds to react, and those microseconds were wasted in confusion. Taman did not think. He simply moved. His legs pushed off the platform as his body flew forward. He was not faster than the guards, not stronger, not better equipped, but he was moving while they were still processing what was happening. His shoulder caught Prince Heijin in the chest, driving the boy backward. The energy blast meant for the prince struck Taman instead. Pain exploded through his body. The blast was designed to instantly kill a Valoran, to overwhelm their nervous system and stop their hearts. It poured into Taman like liquid fire, burning through muscles and organs. He felt his ribs crack from the impact. His left lung collapsed. Blood filled his mouth. Any Valoran would have died instantly. Most species in the galaxy would not have survived the first second, but Taman was human. His body was built by evolution on a death world, designed to take punishment and keep functioning. His bones were denser than Valoran bones. His cardiovascular system had redundancies that kept blood flowing even when damaged. His nervous system could route around injuries that would paralyze other species. He did not die. He did not even lose consciousness. Instead, he wrapped his arms around the prince and rolled. His body was on fire, screaming in agony, but his mind stayed focused. He had to get the prince away from the kill zone. His military training took over, suppressing the pain, keeping him functional. He dragged Heijin across the platform toward the nearest cover. The royal guards finally reacted. Energy weapons lit up the plaza as they returned fire. The crowd scattered in panic. Taemin heard screams and explosions, but they seemed distant and unimportant. All that mattered was the boy in his arms and the pillar ahead that would provide shelter. He made it 5 meters before his legs gave out. He collapsed behind the pillar, still clutching the prince. Heijin stared at him with wide, terrified eyes. The boy was saying something, but Taemin could not hear over the ringing in his ears. He forced his hands to release the prince, then pointed toward where other guards were rushing forward. The message was clear. Run. Get to safety. More guards arrived, surrounding the prince and pulling him away. Taemin tried to stand, but his body would not cooperate. He slumped against the pillar, blood spreading across his uniform. He could feel his heart beating irregularly, struggling to pump blood through damaged vessels. His vision started to blur. A Velaran medic appeared beside him, silver hands moving over his body with quick efficiency. The medic's face showed shock. Taemin knew what he was thinking. How was this human still alive? The medic began working frantically, applying emergency treatments designed for Velaran physiology. They would not work perfectly on human biology, but they might be enough. The last thing Taemin saw before darkness took him was Queen Miyun herself, standing over him. Her face was unreadable, those dark eyes studying him intently. She said something to the medics, her voice carrying absolute authority. Then, she knelt beside him, one silver hand touching his shoulder. "Stay alive, human," she said softly. "I would know the name of the one who saved my son." Taemin tried to answer but could not form words. The darkness pulled him down, and he surrendered to it. His last conscious thought was hoping that the prince was safe. Nothing else mattered. Above him, Queen Miyun watched as the medics loaded the dying human onto an emergency transport. Around them, the royal guards had neutralized the attackers. 3 assassins lay dead, their bodies wearing clothes that marked them as ordinary citizens. But their weapons were anything but ordinary. Technology that should not exist, that bypassed every security measure the Empire possessed. Someone had planned this carefully. Someone had nearly succeeded in killing her son, and only the sacrifice of a human security guard, a being most of her empire considered barely civilized, had prevented tragedy. The queen looked at the blood staining the platform where Taemin had fallen. She made a decision in that moment, one that would change everything. If this human survived, she would see that his sacrifice was recognized, and she would find out who had sent those assassins, no matter what it took. The ceremony was over. The real work was just beginning. Taemin woke to whiteness. The ceiling above him glowed with soft light that did not hurt his eyes. He tried to move and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through his chest, sharp and insistent. He gasped, and machines around him began beeping urgently. A Valoran doctor appeared in his field of vision, her silver face showing concern. She pressed something cold against his neck, and the pain faded to a dull ache. "Do not move," she said in accented but clear English. "Your body is still healing. You should not even be awake yet." Taemin's mouth was dry. "How long?" he managed to croak. 2 weeks, the doctor replied. She checked the displays around his bed, her expression puzzled. "You have been unconscious for 2 weeks. Your injuries were extensive. We were not certain you would survive. 2 weeks. Taemin closed his eyes, processing this. He remembered the blast, the pain, dragging the prince to safety. Everything after that was darkness. "The prince?" he asked. "Safe," a new voice said. Taemin's eyes snapped open. Queen Miyun stood at the foot of his bed, dressed in simple robes rather than the ceremonial outfit he remembered. Without the crown and jewels, she looked less like a distant monarch and more like an actual person. But her presence still filled the room with quiet authority. "Your Majesty." Taemin tried to sit up. The doctor pushed him back down firmly. "Be still," the queen said. It was not a request. She moved closer, studying him with those dark eyes. "I have been waiting for you to wake. We have much to discuss." The doctor bowed and left the room, leaving Taman alone with the ruler of the Valoran Empire. He felt exposed in the medical gown, connected to machines he did not understand. The queen pulled a chair close to his bed and sat, her movements graceful and deliberate. "What is your name?" she asked. "Taman, Your Majesty. Private security contractor with Galactic Protection Services." "Taman," she repeated, testing the word. "A simple name. Tell me." "Taman. Why did you do it?" He did not need to ask what she meant. "He's a kid. Someone had to. My royal guards are trained for exactly such situations. They are augmented with the finest technology in the Empire. Any one of them could have saved my son. But they didn't," Taman said simply. "I was closer. I moved first." The queen leaned back in her chair. "Yes. You moved while they were still analyzing the threat. You acted on instinct while they waited for their systems to identify the weapon. Do you know what that blast did to you?" Taman touched his chest carefully. "Felt like it tried to turn my insides to soup. It was designed to kill a Valoran instantly by overwhelming our nervous system. It should have stopped your heart immediately. Instead, you survived long enough to move my son to safety, and then you survived 2 weeks of the most intensive medical care we could provide. The doctors are calling it impossible. Humans are tough," Taman said with a weak smile. "We don't know when to quit. So I am learning." The queen was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "Are you aware of our laws regarding the royal family?" Taman shook his head. "When someone saves the life of a royal heir, they create what we call a life debt. The saved owes the saver a debt that can never truly be repaid. In practice, this usually means a financial reward, a title, some land perhaps." She paused. "But this situation is different. You did not simply save my son. You threw yourself into certain death for him. You sacrificed yourself for a child you did not know, of a species not your own." "I was just doing my job," Taman said, uncomfortable with the praise. "Your job was to stand guard and look professional. Your job did not require you to die for my son." The queen stood, her robes flowing around her. "I am declaring something unprecedented, Taman. By our law and by my word as queen, you belong to us now." Taman felt his stomach drop. "What does that mean?" "It means you will become part of the royal guard. You will be responsible for my son's safety directly. You will be given quarters in the palace, training in our methods, access to our technology." She smiled slightly. "And it means you will be treated as one of us, with all the honors and responsibilities that entails." "Your Majesty, I'm just a human. I'm not qualified to." "You were qualified enough to do what 50 of my best warriors could not." Her voice was firm. "This is not a request, Taman. This is a royal decree. You saved my son. You belong to us now." The door opened and a young voice called out, "Mother! Is he awake?" Prince Hagen rushed into the room, his face bright with excitement. He stopped at the foot of the bed, suddenly shy. "You are awake. You are—" "Hagen," the queen said gently. "I told you to wait outside. I know, but I heard voices, and I wanted to see him." The prince looked at Taman with something like awe. "You saved my life. The guards said you should have died, but you did not. They said humans are very tough." Taman found himself smiling despite the situation. "Tough and stubborn. We're good at those. Will you really stay?" the prince asked hopefully. "Will you be my guard?" Before Taman could answer, the queen placed a hand on her son's shoulder. "Give him time to recover. Hagen, we will discuss everything later." She guided the boy toward the door, then looked back at Taman. "Rest. Heal. When you are ready, we will begin your training." After they left, Taman lay back and stared at the ceiling. His mind was racing. Royal Guard, living in the palace, protecting the prince, directly. It was insane. He was nobody, just another human trying to make a living in a galaxy that barely respected his species. The doctor returned, checking his vital signs. "You should sleep more," she said. "Your body is healing remarkably fast, but it still needs rest." "Doctor," Taman asked, "is this really happening?" "The Queen wants me in the Royal Guard?" The doctor's expression was hard to read. "Yes, and many in the palace are very unhappy about it. Humans are not well regarded by the nobility. They see you as primitive, violent, unpredictable." She adjusted one of the machines. "But the Queen's word is law, and after what you did, even those who dislike humans cannot deny your courage." Over the following days, Taman learned more about what had happened. The assassins had been identified as members of something called the Purity Council, a group that believed the Valoran Empire had grown weak by accepting lesser species. The weapon they used was illegal technology, banned for centuries. Someone with resources and connections had supplied them. Prince Heijin visited every day, bringing books and games, asking endless questions about Earth and human culture. The boy was lonely, Taman realized. Being royalty meant few real friends, everyone treating you differently because of your birth. To Heijin, Taman was something new and exciting, someone who had proven himself through action rather than bloodline. Taman found himself looking forward to these visits. The prince was smart and curious, with a good sense of humor hidden beneath the formal manners. They talked about everything from Korean food to the differences between human and Valoran games. Heijin was fascinated by the concept of baseball, declaring it sounded much more exciting than the mathematical games Valorans preferred. When Taman was finally cleared to leave the medical bay, Queen Myeon herself came to escort him to his new quarters. The palace was enormous, all soaring ceilings and elegant architecture. Servants and nobles stopped to stare as the queen walked beside a human in simple clothes. "They will talk," the queen said calmly. "Let them. You earned your place here with blood and courage. That is worth more than any title they inherited." His quarters were larger than his entire apartment back on Earth. A bedroom, sitting room, and private bathroom, all furnished in Valoran style but adapted for human use. The bed was reinforced to handle human weight, and the gravity was adjusted to Earth normal. "Tomorrow, you meet Commander Jiwon," the queen said. "She leads the Royal Guard and will oversee your training. I will not lie to you, Taman. She is not happy about my decision. You will have to prove yourself to her and to the other guards." Taman looked out the window at the vast city below. "I know you will." She turned to leave, then paused. "Taman, thank you. Not just for saving my son, but for showing us something we had forgotten. Sometimes the bravest thing is simply to act, without waiting for permission or perfect information." After she left, Taman sat on the edge of his new bed and wondered what he had gotten himself into. He was a long way from Earth, a long way from anything familiar, but when he thought of Prince Heijin's smile and the Queen's words, he felt something he had not felt in a long time. He felt like he mattered. Commander Jiwon did not hide her feelings. The moment Taman walked into the training hall, her silver face showed clear disapproval. She was tall even for a Valoran, her body enhanced with military augmentation that made her movements precise and powerful. The other guards stood behind her in perfect formation, 50 pairs of eyes watching the human, who had somehow earned a place among them. "So you are the one," Jiwon said coldly. "The human the queen believes can protect the prince better than warriors who have trained their entire lives." Taman stood at attention, keeping his face neutral. "I'm here to learn, Commander. I don't claim to be better than anyone." "Good, because you are not." Jiwon began to circle him like a predator. "You got lucky. You were in the right place at the right moment. That does not make you qualified to stand guard over royalty. With respect, Commander, I was the only one who moved when it mattered." The words hung in the air. Several guards shifted uncomfortably. Jiwan's eyes narrowed. I dare nothing, Taemin interrupted calmly. I'm stating a fact. Your systems failed to detect the weapon. By the time you reacted, the prince would have been dead. I'm not saying I'm better. I'm saying I was there, and I acted. That's all. Jiwan stared at him for a long moment, then turned to her guards. Pair combat drills. I want to see what this human can actually do. Minho, you're up. A young guard stepped forward, his silver face uncertain. He was smaller than the others, probably new to the royal guard. Taemin understood immediately. Jiwan was testing him with an opponent who would not completely humiliate him, but who was still far superior in speed and strength. The fight lasted 30 seconds. Minho moved with augmented speed, his blows precise and controlled. Taemin tried to block, to dodge, but the Velaran was simply faster. A sweep took his legs out, and he hit the mat hard. The wind knocked from his lungs. Again, Jiwan ordered. They went again. And again. And again. Each time, Taemin learned a little more about how Velorans fought. They were efficient, technical, their augmented bodies allowing movements humans could not match. But they fought within a system, following patterns that made sense for their biology and technology. After the fifth match, Taemin stayed down a moment longer, breathing hard. His body was covered in bruises, but his mind was working, analyzing, adapting. That was what humans did. They learned. They improvised. Enough, Jiwan said, with satisfaction. You see now how unprepared you are? Taemin stood slowly. I see how you fight, Commander. Very technical. Very clean. But what happens when an enemy doesn't fight clean? Explain. Instead of explaining, Taemin attacked. Not at Minho, but at Jiwan herself. He did not try to match her speed or strength. Instead, he went low, grabbing for her legs in a move no Velaran would consider honorable. She dodged easily, but he had expected that. His momentum carried him into a roll, and he came up behind her, hands reaching for her arm. Jiwan reacted instantly, twisting away and delivering a strike that would have broken human ribs. Taemin took it on his shoulder instead, accepting the pain to maintain position. He did not try to win. He just tried to make her work, to fight unpredictably, to do things her training did not expect. She ended the fight by flipping him over her shoulder and putting him face down on the mat, her knee on his back. But she was breathing harder than before, and there was something new in her eyes when she looked at him. Not respect. Not yet. But perhaps the beginning of curiosity. Interesting, she said, releasing him. Crude and undisciplined, but interesting. You fight like you have nothing to lose. Sometimes that's an advantage, Taemin said, getting to his feet. Over the following weeks, Taemin trained harder than he ever had in his life. The Veloran methods were sophisticated, designed for beings with augmented reflexes and advanced technology. He could not match them in speed or strength. So he learned to think differently. He studied their patterns and found the gaps. He accepted that he would get hurt and used that acceptance to take risks they would not. Slowly, grudgingly, some of the guards began to warm to him. They saw that he was not trying to replace them or claim superiority. He simply brought something different to the table. When they ran combat scenarios, his suggestions sometimes solved problems their traditional methods could not. Prince Heijin continued to visit, now asking Taemin to teach him human fighting techniques. The queen had approved, saying the prince needed to understand different perspectives. Taemin taught him basic self-defense, focusing on awareness and escape rather than combat. Heijin was enthusiastic but clumsy, his Veloran grace failing him when he tried to mimic human movements. Why do humans fight so strangely? Heijin asked one day after practice. The commander says you have no form, no discipline. We fight to survive, Taemin explained. Not to look good or follow rules. On Earth, our ancestors faced animals, bigger and stronger than them. They learned to use anything as a weapon. to attack from unexpected angles, to never give up even when hurt. That became part of how we think. The guards say your people are violent and barbaric. Some are. But violence isn't the same as being willing to fight when necessary. Your guards are warriors, highly trained, but they've forgotten what it's like to truly struggle, to fight when you're outmatched and have to win anyway. A month into his training, everything changed. Queen Mion announced a diplomatic mission to Terminus, a frontier world near disputed space. The prince would accompany her to demonstrate the Empire's confidence in the region's stability. It would be his first official diplomatic function. The royal guard prepared intensively. Intelligence suggested the Purity Council had been quiet since the assassination attempt. But everyone knew they were still out there. Ji-won doubled security protocols and ran endless scenarios with her team. Taemin was included in the planning sessions now, though he mostly listened. During one meeting, he noticed something odd about the route they planned to take through Terminus's capital. The main boulevard they would use had tall buildings on both sides, perfect for ambush. "Commander," he said hesitantly, "this route makes me nervous." Ji-won looked at the map. "It is the ceremonial route. Tradition requires we use it. Tradition also makes it predictable. If I wanted to hit the prince, I'd do it here, where you're channeled and surrounded. Our sensors will detect any threat before it manifests, and our shields can withstand anything short of ship-grade weapons." Like they detected the weapon at the ceremony? The room went silent. Ji-won's face hardened. "You overstep, human. Maybe. But the prince's safety is more important than not offending anyone. I'm just saying we should have backup plans." To his surprise, Ji-won did not dismiss him. Instead, she studied the map again. "What would you suggest?" They spent the next hour developing contingencies. Alternative routes, fallback positions, protocols for if shields failed or sensors were compromised. Ji-won's team was professional enough to contribute good ideas even if they disliked admitting a human might have a point. The mission to Terminus started well. The diplomatic meetings were formal and boring. Exactly as expected. Prince Heijin handled himself well, remembering his lessons and showing appropriate respect to the local leaders. Taemin stayed close, his eyes constantly scanning for threats that might not register on Valoran sensors. The attack came during the ceremonial procession, exactly where Taemin had worried it would. One moment they were moving down the boulevard, crowds cheering on both sides. The next moment, the shields flickered and died. Ji-won shouted orders as her systems went haywire, unable to determine what was happening. Then the building began to collapse. Not the whole structure, just a section directly above their position. Thousands of tons of debris falling. Too fast for the guards to react. Their enhanced speed meant nothing when they could not determine which direction to move. The enemy had planned this perfectly, taking out shields first and then creating chaos. Taemin did not wait for orders. He grabbed Prince Heijin and ran. Not toward safety, but into the collapsing building itself. Ji-won screamed at him to stop, but he ignored her. The safest place in a controlled collapse was not outside where the debris fell, but inside where the structure might create pockets of protection. He pulled the prince through a broken window, feeling the boy's terror but also his trust. Glass cut Taemin's arms, but he barely felt it. Behind them, the street disappeared under tons of rubble. Ahead, the building groaned and shifted. Taemin's mind raced, calculating angles and structural integrity based on instinct rather than sensors. They went up instead of down, climbing damaged stairs while the building shook around them. It was insane, illogical, everything Valoran training said not to do. But Taemin had grown up in earthquake country, had seen how buildings fell. He trusted his gut over logic. They emerged on a damaged balcony 3 floors up, just as the section they had climbed through collapsed completely. Taemin's legs were shaking, his arms bleeding, but Heijin was safe. The prince stared at him with wide eyes, breathing hard but unharmed. "Why did we go up?" Heijin gasped. "Because they expected us to run straight. Sometimes the crazy choice is the safe one." Below, Jiwan and her guards were fighting through the rubble, trying to reach them. The attackers had fled when their trap failed to kill anyone. Within minutes, emergency services arrived and secured the area. Jiwan reached them last, climbing the damaged building with the kind of controlled fury that promised consequences. But when she saw the prince safe in Taemin's protection, some of that anger faded. "That was the most reckless, idiotic thing I have ever witnessed," she said flatly. "Yes, Commander. You violated every protocol. You put the prince in greater danger by going into an unstable structure." "Yes, Commander." Jiwan looked at the collapsed street below, then back at Taemin. "And it worked." She extended her hand. "Well done." Taemin shook it, surprised. The gesture was human, not Valoran. She was adapting to him, just as he was adapting to her. Later, as medics treated his wounds, Taemin overheard two guards talking. One was describing how Taemin had saved the prince by doing exactly what training said not to do. The other guard laughed and said, "That is what makes him useful. He thinks like an enemy, not like us." It was not respect, not quite, but it was a start. The attack on Terminus made news across the Empire. Within days, Taemin's face was on every network. The human guard who had saved the prince by running into a collapsing building. The reports called him crazy, reckless, and incredibly brave. Some outlets praised him as an example of human courage. Others questioned whether someone so unpredictable should be trusted with royal protection. Taemin hated the attention. He stayed in the palace, focusing on training and avoiding journalists who tried to interview him. But he could not avoid the consequences of his newfound fame. Other humans working in the Empire suddenly found themselves treated differently. Some experienced increased respect, their contracts renewed or improved. Others faced greater suspicion, as if Taemin's actions had confirmed that humans were dangerously unpredictable. On Earth, his family watched the news in shock. His sister called him through the communication network, crying and laughing at the same time. "You idiot," she said affectionately. "You never mentioned you were protecting royalty. Mother nearly fainted when she saw you on the broadcast." "I didn't want you to worry," Taemin said. "Too late for that. But we're proud of you. So proud." The investigation into the attacks continued. Queen Myeon assigned her intelligence director, Sumin, to work with the royal guard in uncovering the conspiracy. Sumin was different from other Valorans Taemin had met. She was direct and practical, less concerned with protocol, and more focused on results. She pulled Taemin into her first meeting with Commander Jiwan. "I need both of you," she explained, spreading holographic displays across the conference table. "Jiwan brings tactical expertise and knowledge of palace security. Taemin brings a perspective our enemies might not expect. What have you learned?" The weapon used in the first attack was Korathi technology, banned 200 years ago after the Korathi Wars. The controlled collapse on Terminus required extensive planning and inside knowledge of the prince's schedule. Sumin highlighted several data points. Someone with high-level access is feeding information to the Purity Council. Taemin studied the timeline. Both attacks came during public ceremonies, events that were scheduled months in advance and couldn't be changed without showing weakness. Correct. The enemy knows our protocols, knows we cannot simply hide the prince away. They are patient and well-funded. Sumin looked troubled. And they are more sophisticated than we initially believed. The Purity Council was always dismissed as extremists with more ideology than capability. But these attacks show military-grade planning. Over the following weeks, Taemin found himself drawn deeper into the investigation. His different way of thinking sometimes revealed patterns that Valoran logic missed. When Sumin showed him communication logs between various suspects, Taemin noticed gaps that seemed insignificant to her, but reminded him of tradecraft from Earth spy thrillers. "These blank periods," he said, pointing to the logs. "They're too regular. Like someone is meeting face to avoid electronic surveillance." Sumin's eyes widened. We assumed those were simply times when they were busy. But you are right. The pattern is too consistent. They began tracking physical movements instead of electronic communications. It was old-fashioned detective work, the kind that did not rely on advanced sensors or data analysis. Slowly, a picture emerged. Several high-ranking nobles had regular meetings that never appeared in official schedules. They gathered at a private estate on the edge of the capital, always in groups of 3 or 4, always for exactly 2 hours. "We need to know what they are discussing," Jiwon said during a briefing. "But we cannot simply arrest nobles without proof. The political consequences would be severe." "Then we watch and wait," Suman said. "And we find proof." Meanwhile, Taemin's role with Prince Haejin had evolved beyond just protection. The prince genuinely enjoyed his company, and Queen Myeon encouraged their friendship. Taemin found himself becoming something like an older brother to the boy, teaching him about human culture and philosophy while learning about Valoran history in return. One evening, Haejin asked him a difficult question. "Do you ever regret it? Saving me? You could have died. And instead, you are trapped here in the palace with people who dislike you." Taemin considered his answer carefully. "I don't feel trapped. And I don't regret it. You were a kid in danger. I was someone who could help. The choice was simple. But you did not know me. I could have been terrible. I could have been spoiled and cruel." True. But that's the thing about doing the right thing. You don't get to know the outcome first. You just have to decide if you can live with yourself. If you don't act. Haejin was quiet for a moment. "The nobles say humans are primitive because you still have violence on your world. Because you have not evolved past conflict, like we have. Your people evolved past violence by creating a society where violence wasn't necessary. But that doesn't mean you evolved past the capacity for it. The Purity Council proves that." Taemin leaned back in his chair. "Humans didn't evolve past violence either. But we learned to channel it. To use it when necessary. And control it when not. Maybe that makes us primitive. Or maybe it makes us honest about what we are." The prince thought about this. "You are different from my tutors. They give me answers. You give me questions. Because questions are more useful than answers. Answers just fill your head with what someone else thinks. Questions teach you how to think for yourself. Please. Questions. Questions." The breakthrough in the investigation came 3 weeks later. Suman's team had planted surveillance near the private estate where the nobles met. They captured audio of a conversation between Lord Kyung-soo, a respected member of the Queen's Council, and 2 other high-ranking officials. Taemin listened to the recording with growing anger. Kyung-soo spoke openly about the human contamination of the empire, about how accepting primitive species weakened Valoran purity. He discussed plans for a final attack that would cleanse the royal line and allow the Purity Council to take power. "He is planning to kill the prince at his coming-of-age ceremony," Suman said grimly. "The ceremony cannot be postponed without insulting every noble family in the empire. And the protocol requires the prince to be publicly visible for hours." "Then we arrest Kyung-soo now," Jiwon said. "On what charge? This recording is not legally obtained. We have no physical evidence connecting him to the attacks. His lawyers would have him free within hours, and he would know we are watching him." Taemin spoke up. "So we let him think his plan is working. We prepare for the attack, but we don't show our hand until he commits to it." "That puts the prince at risk," Jiwon objected. "The prince is already at risk," Taemin countered. "At least this way, we control the environment. We know when and where the attack will happen. We can prepare without them knowing we're prepared." It was risky, and everyone knew it. But the alternatives were worse. If they moved too early, the conspiracy would scatter and regroup. If they did nothing, the attack would come anyway, but on the enemy's terms. Queen Myeon made the final decision. "We proceed with the ceremony as planned. But we do it our way." The planning took weeks. Jiwan and Taemin worked together, combining Valoran technology with human tactical thinking. They positioned guards in unexpected locations, set up redundant systems that did not rely on the sensors Kyungsoo might know how to disable, and created contingency plans for every scenario they could imagine. Taemin spent extra time training with the prince, not combat skills, but awareness and survival. How to recognize danger, how to move when things went wrong, how to trust his instincts even when they contradicted what he was taught. "You are scaring him," the queen said one day, watching them practice emergency evacuation drills. "I'm preparing him," Taemin replied. "Fear keeps you alert. Overconfidence gets you killed." She studied him with those dark, unreadable eyes. "You have changed since you came here. You are more confident now, more sure of your place. I've learned that being different isn't the same as being wrong. Your people think in one way, I think in another. Both ways have value. That is wisdom beyond your years, Taemin." She smiled slightly. "My son is lucky to have you. We all are." 4. The day before the ceremony, Sumin received intelligence that made everyone's blood run cold. The Purity Council had acquired more of the Korathi weapons, enough to overwhelm the palace's defenses. They planned a coordinated assault, using assassins disguised as servants, nobles, and even guards. "We should cancel," Jiwan said urgently. "We cannot," the queen replied. "To cancel now would show weakness. The Empire would see it as the Purity Council, dictating our actions. We would never recover the authority to rule." Taemin looked at the intelligence reports, his mind racing. "Then we change the game. They are planning for us to react like Valorans, with technology and shields and predictable tactics. What if we don't?" "Explain," Sumin said. "What if we use human methods? Low-tech, unpredictable, aggressive. They will be prepared for your shields and sensors. They won't be prepared for us to fight dirty." It was a desperate plan, and it required bringing in help that made the Valoran nobles uncomfortable. Taemin contacted other human security contractors working in the Empire, people he had served with before. They were not as polished as the Royal Guard, but they knew how to fight when things got messy. Commander Jiwan objected at first, but Sumin supported the idea. "Taemin is right. We need unpredictability. And these humans have experience in exactly the kind of chaotic combat we might face." The queen approved it, and suddenly Taemin was coordinating between Valoran elite guards and human mercenaries who looked rough and dangerous compared to the polished nobility. The two groups eyed each other with suspicion, but they shared a common goal. "Listen up," Taemin told the assembled humans. "Tomorrow, we protect a kid. That's all this is about. Some people want him dead because they think they're better than us. We're going to show them that thinking is wrong." One of the contractors, a woman named Dana, grinned. "Just like old times, Taemin. Except now, we are protecting royalty instead of cargo. The principle is the same. Keep the principle alive, whatever it takes." That night, Taemin could not sleep. He stood on his balcony, looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow would either prove that humans had a place in this empire, or it would end in disaster. He thought about his family on Earth, about Prince Haejin sleeping somewhere in the palace, about all the choices that had led him to this moment. He did not regret any of them. Whatever happened tomorrow, he had lived true to himself. That had to be enough. A soft sound made him turn. Prince Haejin stood in the doorway, looking small in his sleeping clothes. "Cannot sleep either?" the prince asked. "Too much to think about," Taemin admitted. Haejin joined him at the railing. "Are we going to be okay tomorrow?" Taemin could have lied, could have offered false comfort, but the prince deserved honesty. "I don't know, but I promise you this. Whatever happens, I will be right beside you. You won't face it alone." The prince nodded, looking more confident. "That is all I need to know." They stood together in silence, human and Valoran, watching the city sleep. The grand amphitheater of Valoria had stood for 3,000 years, a massive structure that could hold 50,000 beings. Today, it was filled to capacity for Prince Heijin's coming-of-age ceremony. Nobles in their finest clothes filled the lower sections while common citizens packed the upper levels. The air hummed with anticipation, and the smell of exotic flowers brought from 100 worlds. Taemin stood in the preparation room with Prince Heijin, adjusting the ceremonial robes that marked the transition from child to young adult. The prince looked nervous, his silver hands trembling slightly as he tried to fasten a clasp. "Let me," Taemin said, securing it properly. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Heijin admitted. "And not just because of the ceremony. Fear is good. Fear keeps you alert." Taemin checked his own equipment, hidden beneath his formal guard uniform. A simple knife, a small weapon that did not rely on technology. "Remember what we practiced. If things go wrong, you follow my voice. You trust your instincts. You move fast, and don't look back. Will things go wrong? Probably, but we are ready for it." Commander Jiwon entered, her expression all business. "Security is in place. Your human contractors are positioned in the crowd, trying very hard not to look like humans trying to blend in with Valorans." She almost smiled. "They are terrible at it. 99. They don't need to blend in," Taemin said. "They just need to be ready." Taemin. Jiwon's face grew serious. "Sumin has confirmed that Kyungsoo is here, along with 3 other confirmed conspirators. We have eyes on all of them, but we cannot move until they reveal themselves. The Queen insists on giving them every chance to reconsider." "They won't reconsider," Taemin said flatly. "People like that never do." The ceremony began with traditional Valoran music, harmonics that humans could barely hear, but that made the amphitheater resonate with sound. Queen Mion sat on her throne at the center of the main platform, looking every bit the eternal monarch. Prince Heijin walked down the ceremonial path, and the crowd rose to honor him. Taemin followed 3 steps behind, his eyes scanning constantly. The royal guard lined the path in perfect formation, their armor gleaming. But hidden among the crowd were the human contractors, rough men and women who looked distinctly out of place but who knew how to fight when things got ugly. Dana caught his eye from her position and gave a tiny nod. "Ready." The ceremony proceeded according to ancient protocol. Various nobles approached to give blessings and gifts to the prince. Lord Kyungsoo was among them, his face showing appropriate respect, even as his eyes revealed something colder. When he bowed to Heijin, Taemin noticed his hand slip inside his robes for just a moment. The signal. It was starting. Taemin touched his communicator, a simple click that alerted Jiwon and the others. Around the amphitheater, guards and contractors tensed, ready but not revealing themselves. They had to let the conspirators commit, had to catch them in the act. The blessing ceremony concluded, and Prince Heijin took his place beside his mother on the platform. This was the most dangerous moment, when he would be stationary and visible for the traditional speech about duty and service. The Queen began to speak, her voice carrying across the amphitheater. That was when the shields failed. Not just the platform shields, but every protective field in the entire amphitheater. The crowd gasped as the sudden vulnerability registered. The royal guards reacted instantly, moving to surround the royal family, but their movements were almost sluggish. Someone had activated a field that disrupted their augmentation systems. Taemin felt it too. A pressure that made his head ache. But he was not augmented. He was just human, running on natural biology that no one could hack or disable. While the Valoran guards struggled to adapt, he was already moving. The assassins came from multiple directions at once. Nobles threw off their robes to reveal weapons. Servants who had worked in the palace for years pulled out Korathi blasters. Even 2 guards turned traitor, attacking their fellows from within the formation. It should have worked. It was a perfect plan, accounting for Valoran technology and tactics. But it did not account for humans. Dana and her team moved before the Valorans could recover. They had no augmentation to disrupt, no advanced systems to hack. They were just humans, with simple weapons, and a lot of experience in chaotic fights. They hit the nearest assassins with brutal efficiency, not bothering with the precision of Valoran combat but simply overwhelming them with aggressive violence. Taemin reached Prince Haejin and grabbed him, pulling him off the platform even as energy blasts scorched the space where he had been standing. The queen tried to help, but Taemin pushed her back. "Stay down, your majesty. Let us work." He half dragged, half carried the prince toward the nearest exit. Behind them, the amphitheater had descended into chaos. Assassins fought with guards, while the crowd panicked and fled. Taemin ignored all of it, focused only on getting Haejin to safety. Lord Kyungsoo appeared in their path, holding a weapon that crackled with energy. "The boy dies here," he said calmly, "and the contamination of our empire ends." "Not today," Taemin replied, pushing Haejin behind him. Kyungsoo fired, and Taemin dove sideways, feeling the heat of the blast pass centimeters from his head. He rolled and came up running. Not at Kyungsoo, but past him, using speed and surprise, rather than trying to fight directly. But Kyungsoo was fast too, enhanced with technology that made him superhuman. A silver hand grabbed Taemin's shoulder and threw him backwards. He hit a pillar hard enough to crack ribs, pain exploding through his chest. Kyungsoo advanced, raising his weapon for a finishing shot. Then Prince Haejin did something unexpected. Instead of running, the boy picked up a piece of fallen masonry and threw it at Kyungsoo. It was a clumsy throw, and Kyungsoo easily dodged it, but it gave Taemin the second he needed to recover. He launched himself at Kyungsoo, going low and dirty, grappling for the weapon rather than trying to match strength. Kyungsoo was stronger and faster, but Taemin fought with the desperation of someone who had nothing to lose. He took hits that would have killed most beings, his human body absorbing punishment through sheer, stubborn refusal to quit. They crashed into the ground together, Kyungsoo's weapon skittering away. The Valoran noble tried to choke Taemin, his enhanced strength crushing down on his throat. Taemin's vision started to blur, darkness creeping in from the edges. He fumbled for the knife hidden in his uniform. "Why won't you die?" Kyungsoo hissed, increasing the pressure. Taemin managed to get the knife free and drove it into Kyungsoo's side. It was not a killing blow, but it was enough to make the noble loosen his grip. Taemin sucked in air and hit him again, this time in the shoulder. And again, and again. He was not trained in knife fighting. He was not elegant or efficient. He was just a human, refusing to quit, stabbing with increasing desperation, until Kyungsoo finally collapsed. Taemin rolled away, coughing and gasping. His throat felt crushed. His ribs were definitely broken, and blood covered his uniform. But he was alive. And more importantly, when he looked up, Prince Haejin was still standing, unharmed. Around them, the battle was ending. The human contractors had turned the tide with their brutal efficiency, and now the royal guard had adapted to the disruption field. Ji-won herself was fighting two assassins at once, her movements deadly despite the technological interference. One by one, the conspirators fell. Queen Mi-yeon appeared, surrounded by guards, her face showing rare emotion. "Haejin!" She rushed to her son, pulling him into an embrace. Then she looked at Taemin, still on the ground, covered in blood and barely conscious. Medics. Now, the aftermath was a blur for Taemin. He remembered being carried out of the amphitheater, remembered the pain of his injuries, remembered thinking that at least the prince was safe. Then, darkness took him again. When he woke 3 days later, he was back in the medical bay that was becoming far too familiar. The same Valoran doctor from before smiled when she saw his eyes open. "You need to stop making a habit of this," she said gently. "Did we get them all?" Taemin asked, his voice rough. "Yes, Lord Kyungsoo is in custody, along with 17 other conspirators. The Purity Council has been dismantled. It is over." Over. Taemin closed his eyes and let that sink in. It was really over. Queen Mi-yeon visited him the next day. She looked tired, the stress of recent events showing despite her usual composure. She sat in the now familiar chair beside his bed and studied him in silence for a long moment. "I told you once that you belonged to us," she finally said. "Do you remember?" "Yes, Your Majesty. I was wrong." She leaned forward, her expression earnest. "You do not belong to us because I decreed it, or because of some ancient law about life debts. Those are just words, just formalities." Taman waited, uncertain where this was going. "You have proven something to this empire, Taman. You have shown us that strength comes in many forms, that sometimes the wisest action is the one that seems reckless. That being civilized does not mean being soft." She smiled. "My people had forgotten these lessons. We had become so advanced, so perfect, that we lost the ability to truly struggle. You reminded us what it means to fight for something that matters. I was just doing my job, Your Majesty." "No. You were doing far more than that." She stood, her robes flowing around her. "I am announcing a new policy. Humanity will be offered full partnership in the Valoran Empire. Earth will gain representation in the Galactic Council, and humans will be welcomed into all levels of imperial service, including the Royal Guard." Taman's eyes widened. "Because of me? Because of what you represent? Because you showed us that we need what humanity offers. Not just your strength or your stubbornness, but your perspective, your willingness to question, to adapt, to do the illogical thing when logic fails." She moved toward the door, then paused. "I have one more question for you, Taman. When I said you belong to us, I was trying to give you a place, but belonging should not be commanded, it should be chosen." She turned to face him fully. "So I ask now, not as a queen, but as a mother whose son you have saved twice. Will you stay? Will you continue to guard Heijin? Not because I order it, but because you choose to?" Taman thought about his family on Earth, about the life he had left behind, but he also thought about Prince Heijin's smile, about Commander Jiwan's grudging respect, about feeling like he mattered for the first time in years. "Yes," he said simply, "I will stay." The Queen's smile was genuine and warm. "Thank you. Not just for this choice, but for everything you have done. You dared your life for my son when you had no reason to. You have earned a place among us in every way that matters." After she left, Prince Heijin entered, still moving carefully as if afraid he might disturb something. "You are awake," he said with obvious relief. "Hard to get rid of me," Taman replied. The prince sat in the chair his mother had vacated. "I heard what Mother said. About you. Staying. I am glad." "Me too, kid. Me too." "Taman, can I ask you something?" "Always. Why do humans keep fighting even when they should give up? When I saw you fighting Lord Kyungsoo, you should have died. He was stronger and faster. But you kept going. Why?" Taman considered the question carefully. "Because giving up is a choice, and humans are stubborn about choices. We decide something matters, and then we make it matter, through sheer refusal to quit. Is it logical? No. Is it smart? Probably not. But it is who we are." Heijin nodded slowly. "I want to be like that. Stubborn in the right way. You already are. You threw that rock at Kyungsoo when you could have run. That was brave and stubborn, and exactly right." The prince smiled, then grew serious again. "The nobles are talking. They say that humans will change the empire, that nothing will be the same. They are probably right. Change is scary. But sometimes, it is necessary. I am not scared," Heijin said with the confidence of youth. "I think humans will make us better." 5 years later, Taman stood in the same training hall where Commander Jiwan had first tested him. But now, he wore the uniform of a training instructor, teaching a class of mixed Valoran and human guards. Jiwan stood beside him, her earlier hostility replaced with genuine partnership. "The key," Taman told the class, "is to combine the best of both approaches. Valoran precision and technology with human adaptability and aggression. Neither is better. Both are necessary. A young Valoran guard raised his hand. But sir, what if the technology fails? What if we are like the original royal guard during the first assassination attempt? Then you adapt, Jiwan answered before Taemin could. You remember that you are more than your augmentations. You think, you improvise, you fight with what you have. She glanced at Taemin. Lessons we learned from watching a stubborn human refuse to quit. After class, Taemin found Prince Heijin waiting for him. The prince was 17 now, taller and more confident, already showing signs of the leader he would become. Ready? Heijin asked. They walked through the palace gardens together, a weekly tradition they had maintained. Heijin told him about his diplomatic training, about the challenges of preparing to eventually rule an empire that now included hundreds of human worlds. Do you ever regret it? Heijin asked suddenly. Staying here instead of going home to Earth? Taemin looked around at the alien landscape that had become familiar. At the palace that had become home. No. Home is not always where you start. Sometimes, it is where you choose to be. Good, Heijin said. Because we still need you. I still need you. And I will be here, Taemin promised. For as long as you need me. That evening, Taemin stood on his balcony again, looking out at the city as he had done so many times before. His communicator chimed with a message from his sister on Earth. She had graduated medical school and was now working with a joint human-Valoran hospital program. One of many new initiatives bridging the two cultures. Everything had changed since that day he threw himself in front of an energy blast meant for a child he did not know. He had been nobody then, just another human trying to survive in an alien empire. Now he was part of something larger. A bridge between worlds. Proof that different did not mean lesser. He thought about the Queen's words from years ago. You belong to us. She had been wrong then, but was right, in a way she had not intended. He did belong here. Not because anyone claimed him, but because he had chosen it. Because he had found purpose, and family, and a place where his stubborn human refusal to quit actually mattered. The three suns were setting, painting the sky in colors that Earth never saw. Taemin smiled and went inside to prepare for tomorrow's training session. There was always more work to do, more guards to train, more ways to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. He dared his life for an heir, and the Queen had said he belonged to them. But the truth was simpler and more profound. He belonged because he chose to belong. And that choice had changed everything.